Top lane is a role defined by its isolated gameplay and use of long lanes, meaning that your wave management is the single most important concept for any top laner, as it will make or break your early game. So, in today's video, we're going to dive into some replays featuring some of League's all-time greatest top laners, see exactly how they manage their waves in order to dominate their opponent like a pro. And if learning more and getting better at League of Legends is something you want to get into, come check out the classes I'm running at Gosu Academy. You're going to be able to level up your game up to twice as fast with 3 sessions a week run by myself and other professional coaches. And with this class structure, we're able to keep things cheaper, meaning you can access 12 coaching sessions with a variety of different coaches for less than the price of a normal one-on-one session. And if you use my code ROGUE at checkout, you're going to get the first month free, so you can easily drop in on one of my sessions and check out exactly what it's all about. So now, just head on down and follow the link in the description below. First thing we're going to cover before you look at some actual examples is covering the different types of archetypes of top laners that exist, because this massively affects how you want to manipulate your wave and your win condition. There are 3 main categories we can sort top lane champions into. Firstly, we have all-in and long trade champions, like Gwen or Tryndamere, who generally take a keystone like Lethal Tempo or Conqueror to complement. These champions need to use the full distance of the lane. Then we have your short trade and mostly scaling top laners, mainly consisting of your tanks. These champions usually take grasp to complement this playstyle. They need to stay safe by keeping their wave close to the tower, where they can keep trade short, proccing their grasp, and quickly disengage back to safety. Finally, we have your poke top laners, who dominate in the early levels. Generally, these are ranged champions, but can also include something like Gangplank. They're amazing at zoning their opponent off the wave, stacking up a big one, crashing into the tower, and then poking into the tower and getting some chip damage. Now that we understand our champion archetypes, let's look at some examples. So, to start things off, we're going to be looking at Wonder, Fnatic's top laner, playing Jace. And as mentioned before, Jace is one of those top laners that is really dominant early and has this massive range advantage that you can use in order to manipulate the wave well. He's also great at poking, and so you're going to watch how Wonder uses a champion archetype to dominate his lane through his wave manipulation. So, to start things off, you see exactly what I talked about. Jace is extremely strong in these early levels. He can dodge in and out of the bushes, using them to drop creep aggro and completely zone his opponent off. And you can see that already. Ornn literally can't even get an XP range of the minions, let alone touch them and try and contest push. This continues for a while, and you can see absolute dominance in these traits. Ornn simply can't farm, missing a couple minions here and there, just hoping to get some XP, while Jace is allowed to mass a massive wave. And in a moment like this, you kind of see that come to fruition. We have a huge wave going into the enemy tower, and this is where this poking archetype really comes online. So this is really awkward for Ornn. He both has to worry about last hitting under tower on these minions that are at awkward health bars, whilst being shot at by Jace over and over and over. He's in a really tough spot. Now, Jace is great at doing this. He can simply EQ, he can auto-attack Ornn while he tries to farm. But now that the wave's been cleared, this is where you see a massive key difference between this archetype and playing something else like the Gwen or Tryndamere all-in lanes. Right? So these ranged top laners and these poke champions don't need a massive lane in order to play. They are absolutely fine being in front of the enemy's tower and kind of prefer it, as it's really nice having a bigger wave. It lets you play your poking style and your chip damage on the tower a lot easier. So instead of bouncing the wave and looking for a freeze, we give the minions a couple love taps here, and we turn the push, right? Always going with 2 or 3 waves at a time. So there's no point in just one-shotting the wave as soon as you see it and pushing 6 minions into your opponent's tower 6 at a time. You're just going to be feeding them farm without getting much. Instead, Wonder stacks up the wave until it's 3 waves deep. This gives him time to poke before the wave crash into tower, sorry. And at the moment it does crash, we've stacked up a massive wave. Ornn is low HP, and so Ornn concedes and just chooses to TP back, and we get an advantage. Awesome. So after getting that initial advantage and coming back to lane, we come back, we have 2 long swords, we have some mana, and instead of using that freeze yet again, we come back to lane, we instantly take a nice trade, and we turn the push. Again, we give the minions a couple love taps here and there in order to turn that push, because we want to use that stacking wave and we want to play under the enemy's tower, especially after 5 minutes. The tower in top lane has a debuff. It takes half damage before 5 minutes. And so after 5 minutes, you really want to turn the burners on and start playing really aggressive and trying to get that tower damage more. And you can see, by the time that Warwick gets here, Jace has a level lead, he has a HP lead, and so the gank doesn't even matter, and he just opts into a 1v2 and kills them both. In this next replay, we're going to be looking at things from the perspective of Korean top laner, the Shy. You can see that in this game he's playing Gwen, which is one of those all-in long trade style top laners who takes lethal tempo, and so you can see straight off the bat he uses this archetype really well. Dashing forward, keeping his lethal tempo stacked, and prolonging these trades because that's what he wants. He needs these long trades. And because the wave level 1 starts in the center of the lane, we have lots of space to do so, because the enemy has to run really far in order to get their tower, and by the time they've gotten there, we've gotten a really nice trade. So in this way, we can use these champions and leverage our lethal tempo or conqueror, which are usually the stronger keystones level 1, and in most matchups, we can dominate the lane in the first few levels, and end up in a similar situation to last time. So now we're here in front of our opponent's tower with that big stacked wave, which is very similar to that last replay we had when we were playing the Jace. But here, Gwen is nowhere near as useful as what Jace is whilst under the enemy tower. She can manage to get a little bit of poke in, but it's nothing compared to what Jace did to Ornn in that last game. And so this is the big moment where things break down. In that last replay, Jace turned the push here, stacked waves 2 at a time, and continued shoving waves into tower and chipping the tower and the enemy top laner. But instead, Gwen's not going to touch the wave at all. She's going to let it come back into a situation like this, where she has tons of space behind the enemy top laner and can just freeze. Now when we come back from base, we're going to see a very similar thing. When Gwen comes back to lane, we end up in a similar situation to what Jace was in. We quickly crash the wave into tower, taking a little trade along the way. But when the wave crashes, again, there's not near as much as what we can do. So we have a little bit of a look, but of course, we can't get as near as much as what that Jace did, and so we make use of that time instead, and we go for a little bit of a walk, drop some wards, and spend time elsewhere. And then in a moment, you're going to see when we come back to lane, and the waves bounced a bit, it's going to end up slowly in a way better position for us. Right now, Renekton's pretty close to his tower, and he has some relative safety, and he can keep his trades short, just using his W, his Q, and dashing out back to his tower before we can follow. But now that the waves moved up a little bit more, he's in a lot scarier of a situation. He's not only scared of us when we have lots of space to chase him down, and what you'll see with this archetype a lot is people taking Ghost on champions like Tryndamere and Darius, but he ends up in this impossible situation here, where he's struggling to farm. We have so much space to chase him down and kill him, and he's so scared of our jungler that he ends up recalling and just giving a full wave. In our last example from this same game, we see the exact same thing happening again. A big wave coming in towards Gwen, and even though Gwen is stronger and can probably turn the push, she merely trims the wave. Now, we don't want the wave to be too big. We want to make sure our opponent has more minions than us, but not so many that they're going to be strong enough to easily fight us 1v1 or crash into the tower, or, God forgive, 2v1 when someone comes. So we give it a little bit of a trim when Renekton leaves, but we don't fully kill the wave. We like having this whole entire lane to use to chase down Renekton. And here's a big thing we do is here, we simply tank the minions so that it freezes for a little bit longer. And this puts, again, Renekton in a really tough position where, in all honesty, we could probably just solo kill him here, but we have Jarvan for moral support. Now finally, demonstrating our last archetype is going to be top laner for Astralis, Finn, playing Ornn. Now this scaling tank style isn't just limited to playing tanks, it can also cover things like Nasus or Kayle top lane who are just really weak early and don't want prio anyway, and so you're just going to do a lot of conceding. So the first thing to note is we did a leash, right? We want to give our team the best head start to the game because we aren't the win condition early. And when you come to lane late, the main disadvantages is that you can't contest push, which is really nice to have. It starts you off on a winning edge, but we don't really want push anyway. Again, we're not the win condition, and in some situations, if you verse a stronger champion, maybe something that has an all-in rune like Conquer or a lethal tempo, even if you do get push, you're probably too weak anyway to actually crash that wave, and so you end up just giving them their own win condition, which, as we spoke about in the last replay, is having lots of space behind your opponent to kill them with. So this is kind of the opposite. You want as little space behind you as possible. You want to be as close to your tower for as long as possible so that you can always disengage, run back to your tower, and stay safe. The biggest thing we're looking for is to stay healthy. Now, in this replay, Finn didn't do the most amazing job staying healthy, but that's why we have TP. So on this archetype, it's really important that you have TP. Most of the time, you're not getting much use out of Ignite anyway, and even in late game, TP is really good to help you group, which is the main thing that tanks want to do. But just for this early part of the lane, if things do go wrong and you take some bad trades with the wave coming in and you're not going to be strong enough to be able to crash a wave and get a free recall, well, we're going to have to take TP so we can get our recalls somehow without losing a ton of waves. But you can see in this early part of the lane, there's nothing flashy happening. We're just trying to stay healthy. We're just drawing the enemy's attention. And in a moment, you're going to see the most Ornn thing I've ever seen in my life. We're just playing top lane and the enemy jungler tries to gank and he gets nothing. And meanwhile, our team's getting dragon. This is your scaling top laner, everyone. Now, this is not to say that you can't ever play strong. This is really how you play in your early levels. At a certain point, once we're level 6 or 7 or 8, we get to a point where we've got enough health, we're just unkillable. Doesn't matter where your wave is, if it's on the enemy side of the lane, you're probably so tanky that the enemy can't do anything anyway, and so finally, we can actually start playing the game and influencing it. We're just going to have to survive until that point, and now we get to a point like this where we can finally take priority, and a lot of these top lane champions anyway, they need some levels before they can actually group and be effective, and usually a good measure for this is their ult. If you think about all of these scaling top laners, all of these tank top laners, their utility comes from their Sion ult, their Malphite ult, their Ornn ult, and so most of how we play after that is that we just push in mid-wave, we push in top wave, sorry, and we just start walking down and looking to ult mid lane and help our team out. Now for our final replay, I want to do something kind of fun and look at a replay from one of my students. This is a new student who I did my first session with about a week ago, and this is one of his games since then. So one of the bigger topics we talked about was wave management, and in this case, this is going to be generally useful no matter what your archetype is, and that's the idea of going as slow as possible until the final wave, and then going as fast as possible, okay? So when we have this really long lane that is top lane, and the wave starts all the way back near your tower, you have so much space in order to use where we can stack up waves before it goes into our opponent's tower. And so if we start a slow push all the way back at our tower and we go as slow as we can, only last hitting minions, it gives us the chance to let more and more minion waves join. The perfect number is 4. If a wave starts in front of your tower, you can stack it for an entire 2 minutes and have 4 waves. But now when it's the final wave, we want to nuke that in as fast as we can. So by stacking it, we build up our wave to be even bigger. The more minions that come, the bigger our level lead. And then it gives us heaps of time to take good trades. And finally, when we get that last wave and we crash it, we end up in a situation like this, where because of our good trades, our lane opponent's only on half health. Because he hasn't killed our minions yet, we have a massive level lead because they're still alive. And then when we go ahead and we make a play like this and we dive him and we get the kill, well, first of all, it's easier because he's low health and lower level. But suddenly the reward for that kill, the lane is over. He's just lost 2 or 3 waves, and this is the crux of how you convert your lead in top lane, is you stack up big waves, starting back here, you kill them as slow as possible, and we can stack a wave up until 3 or 4 waves, giving us that time to create an advantage, and when that final wave crashes over here, we nuke it into tower, and we cash it all in, and if our opponent's done a bad job and they've lost health, we can do something like dive them, and then get massive reward that leads to getting actual damage on the tower and denying huge waves that let you snowball your lead. Now, if you stuck around to the end, I want to say thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a sub down below and check out some of my other videos. And be sure to go check out my Metafy linked in the description where you can get a free 30-minute coaching session with me.